Hey everyone, in a past video I talked about the Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule applied it to comics where basically 20% of the comics hold 80% of the value over time. Just, some general principles, all the science stuff. But I wanted to go over, I was thinking about it, like there's another interesting law called the Law of Diminishing Returns. I'm going to bore you by reading it just right now. It's diminishing returns, also called the Law of Diminishing Returns or the Principle of Diminishing Marginal Productivity, is an economic law stating that if one input in the production of a commodity is increased while all other inputs are held constant, a point will eventually be reached at which additions of the input yield progressively smaller or diminishing increases in output. But like I said, you can also apply it to intellectual property. For example, like a character, such as, like, let's take Batman here. So when Batman came out in 1939 in Detective 27, I mean, that was, can you imagine? Like, what do you do to keep it interesting? Well, you have a love interest in Vicky Vale, Commissioner Gordon, the Joker, some really cool, frankly frightening villains. Then you have the introduction of Robin, Dick Grayson. So it's like, boom, another major character. Like, I don't know if Robin was the first sidekick, but he was certainly one of them. Probably not the first, but he's right up there. In the 50s, it was kind of tough. Batman survived. And then I think it was early 50s, his first sort of meeting with Superman. So you've got that sort of that crossover potential. 60, the JLA. But again, you go through all that kind of, I call it the goofy science fiction era of DC Comics, and all comics really, because I mean, horror had been taken away from them. There's only so much you can do for true crime. So you had sort of kid stuff, right? So boom, diminishing returns, right? Like huge height of initial popularity, and then it's just like, okay, how many villains of the month can you do over the years before people or your readership sort of declines, right? 1966, huge event in Batman's history. That's the introduction of the TV show. Of course, it's kind of campy, satirical, but again, immensely popular, right? It just, or changed the commodity, I guess. So it's no longer just a comic. It's become like an intellectual property. So 66 did that. The show only lasted for 2 years, from 66 to 68. This came out in 1969. I so wish I had this in better condition. This is Detective Comics 395. So where Batman and Robin had been kind of like the, goofy sci-fi villain of the month thing. This took it back to the dark. This was Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams combining to create like a more edgier Batman, one who operated in the night again. 1970s, you break into like the social issues, like you have drugs, you have the racism, you have like that sort, and of course you got underground comics as well, making a big appearance in the 70s. But again, it's like, okay, so this is new and exciting, but month after month, right? Because that's the publishing schedule of comics. It just, you have diminishing returns until you need that next big thing, right? And so where's the next big thing? Well, this is where the game changed again, because where it was, okay, now it was on television, and then all of a sudden the subject matter's gone back to the edgier and the art's gotten better. It's in the 80s, the marketing changed as it went to, that's when it started to switch from newsstands to comic shops, direct distribution. So what's interesting about that is that's when, in my mind anyway, that's when the whole collector's market started, when it went from newsstands to direct distribution, because suddenly, you could get a pull box, or you could get comics in really good shape, or you could cater what you wanted, right? It wasn't just what was left on a newsstand. It's, look, I want these issues, and they're going to be in good shape, because a lot of these comic shops took the time to, make sure they were appeasing the collectors in the customer base, right? So that was huge. So as comics kind of grew up from, having to go through newsstands and spinner racks into their own kind of shops, they went from kids to sort of adults to collectors. And not only that, but the comic book code, that's a terrible thing right up here, started to be questioned in the 80s as well. So you had some issues, and I guess there was a couple in the 70s that dropped it, but it really, the relevance really was questioned by the mid-80s. The other thing with Batman, okay, so you get edgier, but that's fine. Okay, so where do you go from there? Well, a Robin dies. We have a death in the family. Huge event, especially since it was a phone-in vote. Kind of interesting. Killing Joke. Barbara Gordon gets shot. I know that was supposed to be of outside continuity, but still they took it in. Dark Knight Returns. Batman as basically retired, as old, right? In the future. Speaking of future, later on we had Batman Beyond, so that sort of takes a new direction in who will carry on the Batman mantle, in the far future, and what changes will be made. 1989, you had the Batman movie, Tim Burton, Michael Keaton, and for those of you who think that was the first big superhero blockbuster, I would argue that Superman in 1978 was the first truly big budget superhero blockbuster. And I still believe that to this day. And of course, Disney Marvel did it in this millennium, with starting with Iron Man, then the Avengers and whatnot. But in 78, I honestly think it was Superman was kind of the first big one, and then Batman in 89. And of course, there were sequels on top of that. But so with the diminishing returns, where do you go from there? Yes, there was a huge collector's implosion in the mid-90s, I think 93, 94, sometime around there. But you can see it's like, if I have the same IP, right, in this case like Batman, how do you keep that alive? Like if you're publishing monthly, how do I, it gets to the point of like No Man's Land, where Gotham suffered an earthquake, and where do you go from there? And so you have constantly new villains thrown in, new characters, different love interests. Batman disappears for a while. He has a son, Damian Wayne, appears as well, right? So, but it's just, it'll never be the same. It's like, on this downward kind of trend, you get boom, bump to keep it interesting, but it's still, as far as like comics go, and that's kind of what I think about, like where, like print media is dying. There's no two ways around it. It's still a lot sold, and I get it, but the future has really got to be kind of digital comics, or it's actually the IPs. So like Batman as a character in this case. So because now you've got games, movies, shows, animations, all kinds of different stuff, right? So very recognizable character. You know what he's about, and so I don't know. I just wanted to do a little bit of diminishing returns, something to think about, and why you have all these crazy, like Tim Drake's bisexual now, right? Well, yeah, because what else can we do to sell comics month after month, right? You need these kind of these sort of like new resetting of things, because even if you have such a great character as Batman, like it's been 80 years, it's amazing that he's still like selling books to this point, and it just goes to show that the mass appeal, I guess, of what it is. So the other kicker is too, like if people are buying these old ones, like I bought this a long time ago, don't get me wrong, but are they still buying the new stuff, right? If for example, like I picked up Batman Reptilian, good art, but great art, but again, it's been done. It's not particularly that story, but like Arkham Asylum, kind of the same thing, gritty. So I think this is why you see the big companies, they have to go with the younger ones now, right? Like let's Superman is off-world, so we can focus on Jonathan Kent. Let's go from Wonder Woman to Yara Flor. Let's, we got a new Robin, Damian Wayne, right? So, and then they got the Independents too. I just picked this one up. One thing weird I did notice, and I noticed this with Radiant Black too, like you can't see it very much, but I noticed like there's like a ripple to the Image comics, and I don't know why that is. If I look, there's like, it's something to do with the printing process that they got. So, I mean, that's one of the things I like about the DC card stock, is that it's really nice. But anyway, I'm off topic here. Diminishing returns. Yeah, it's I'm not trying to be depressing or anything, but it's a law, right? It's like an intellectual property is the same as anything else. So what can you do to it to keep it fresh, relevant, and what else? It's like James Bond, right? What do you do in that case? It's been around for a long time. Superman. But yeah. Other good news. After 14 weeks, my CBCS order, my 10 Modern Comics, has finally gone into pressing. So if you're looking to submit comics, be prepared for a long delay before they're even received. So anyways, sorry I haven't, oh yes, I did buy one more thing. I must show. Yep, I did receive these in the mail. So one of the things I've been bidding on a bunch of, this is Gunsmith Cat's Burst, Dark Horse. It was only put out as the Tankobon, as the manga, by Dark Horse. It's kind of like a conclusion to Dark Horse, or to the Gunsmith Cats, but it's left open. But it's sort of like the author, Kenichi Sanada, is he's kind of concluding it, but he's left it open for future stories if you'd want. Got number 2, Parental Advisory. Number 3, that one was actually in plastic. That was really nice. And number 4, the one I didn't get, is number 5. Speaking of online comics, I had to buy that one online just to finish off the reading. But yeah, it's interesting. I've been a couple times now on Gunsmith Cat's comics from the States, but I've been beaten out twice now. So they're not super expensive, but they're not cheap either, right? So especially once you factor in shipping. But anyway, I'll get going. Thanks for watching again, guys, and it's just something to think about. Like where's the future? How long can we keep beating an intellectual property to death, or what do we have to do to keep it exciting and relevant? So now I do love comics, don't get me wrong, but it's, you worry about it, right? It's like it's kind of all been done before, right? So where do you go from here, and how do you make it new and exciting and relevant? So if you have any answers, just let me know. Okay, thanks. Nice seeing everybody again. Talk to you later.